and now we continue with our very first keynote speaker, Kitty Jakab from Lunar Incubator, Hungary. She will introduce their survey that they carried out in the Hungarian ecosystem. Please welcome Kitty on stage.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. As I was already presented, I'm Kitty Jakab. I'm from Lunar Program. And what I will be talking about is the Hungarian startup ecosystem. A year ago or so, we have worked together with the National Research and Development and Innovation Office and the Ministry of Culture and Innovation to really look around in our ecosystem and diagnose what are the key points which would need improvement to really accelerate our whole ecosystem. And a few takeaways and diagnostic points is what I would like to present to you today. So first and foremost, if we look at the big picture, we see that looking at valuation of unicorns, and we are looking at unicorns in a lot of cases because they are directly or indirectly drive a big part of ecosystem valuations. If you look at it right now, North America and Asia is taking up most of it. Europe all over is pretty much lagging behind and is pretty much being a little bit left out of this game. If you look at it, what are the reasons behind is that first and foremost, we have less of really high valued startups overall in the European ecosystems compared to others. This is partially because we have fewer startups. So fewer startups start out their journey, so less are able to arrive. However, we are particularly bad in the conversion rate. So how much of our startups will ever become a really big company and are able to scale up to unicorn status. And up there, we see that actually we are pretty much better than Latin America or Asia. However, when we see conversion rates, that's a different story. And this proves that startups need big markets. So if they are born on big markets, they can scale and accelerate on their local market. However, if you are in a smaller market, and if you look at it in CE, this will be even more so true. Overall, very similar situation as in Europe, Hungary, everywhere else. We are a little bit like in the lower middle range. We need to step out to global markets as soon as possible. Because not just in CE especially, we have small countries with small markets where even regionally expanding, it's a lot of work with not as much scaling reward as we would hope so, while in bigger countries, that is a given that they have already a very strong local economy. However, this is not only the playing field of huge economies and big nations. If we look at what we should look out for, where we should take inspiration from, we identified Israel, Estonia, and Austria. They are similar in size or even smaller. In some cases, they share some of the history with us of being in the Eastern Bloc or not being typically Western European. And we see that they are able to achieve really good numbers and growth compared to us. And if you look at it, Austria, who is our neighbor with very similar size, of course they have the opportunity in Germany and the DACH region, but still their numbers are something that we can aspire to. But what do we need for an actual successful ecosystem? We need all the players. And by all the players, we mean universities and the education system. We need the corporates, we need investors and funding opportunities, and we need all the professional support like incubators, accelerators, mentors, and so on. And all over it. We need the policymakers, we need the government and the state to provide the framework where these players can do their job effectively. All this to help the startup in the middle, to help them achieve something, because that's their success is the success of everyone around. Very quickly, a few numbers. We are actually in Hungary doing pretty good in bachelor or BSc STEM students. We have a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of them are not going to masters or PhD, which we should work on, but there is potential there. Unfortunately, we also have fairly low corporate R&D spending, which is another focus area that could be addressed. Unfortunately, we are currently not having a lot of big acceleration programs, and very few of our startups are able to get out and really be part of the big like YC or Techstars like accelerator programs, which we see as one way to really accelerate their growth towards global markets as quickly as possible. And we also see that startups that are able to make it out there have a much higher likelihood of success. And last but not least, unfortunately, we also are not the best funded market. This is a little bit like a reverse number. This is how much startup is asking for money from one angel investor or from one VC. And we see that this is really high. So a lot of startups are trying to ask the same investors. So investors and VCs have a very high demand of money from them. However, we have to keep in mind, and here a very quick show of hands, how many of you are from startups here? Okay, quite a few. So, this is all about you. We are not as important as you are, because you have to be successful, and that will lead for all the ecosystem players to be also successful and in a thriving ecosystem. So there are 3 stages that we looked at, and that I will bring a couple points on. One, it's kind of team formation when the project team is just starting out. The second one is the scale-up phase, when they're already having an MVP and going to market. And last but not least, the scale-up phase, when they should be accelerating their growth and expanding internationally. The first message is pretty much that most teams, when they start out, they are preparing for a sprint instead of a marathon. Most of our startup teams are not aware of how much hardship will come when they start, which is good. They have to be optimistic to start out on the journey, but a lot of them are facing hardships very early on and they might give up. However, the good news is that actually our entrepreneurial inclination is not that bad, and we have a lot of SMEs. There is a lot of companies already established. Unfortunately, right now, they are not startups mostly. So in Hungary, we don't lack entrepreneurial spirit, but we are very risk-averse. And this is something that we can address with evangelization and education to make people aware that a startup and building a globally scaling tech company is a really interesting and exciting opportunity for them instead of building the next mom and pop shop or traditional business. The next one is that actually our startups start to build the Death Star. We have a lot of amazing engineers and IT developers, and they make great teams. However, they want to have the perfect product when entering the market. So they wait a lot of time to get to that point. Unfortunately, with not the best results in many cases. So sometimes their product and the need of the market is not necessarily as close as it would be ideal. And if we look at data, this is from the Startup Hungary's report and also the Polish report of the same metric. We see that in Hungary, actually, for much longer, even like the new startups, but even later on, still a lot of companies are stuck in that validation phase. of still trying to find the problem-solution fit. And this is something that we should be helping them to overcome and grow quicker and take the next steps quicker. And this needs to be also supported by financing and funding. Angel investors are very key to early stage funding in whole Europe and all over the world. However, we have very few of them overall, and unfortunately, they tend to invest lower ticket sizes in the early rounds compared to Estonia or Austria. This actually means, unfortunately, that our startups need to compete with less money on the same markets, in the same game as others in the region even, and especially globally. Meanwhile, we also see, if we really look at it, that public or fully private funded teams are generally the rising stars and much more likely to have a private funding help a team, because with private funding, and especially with angel investors, they don't just get the money, they get a lot of experience, a lot of network, and a lot of additional things that are able to help them jump the next and the next hurdles and barriers. And in the scale-up phase, a founder is as calm as a skydiver without a parachute. At this point, they already have a pretty big overhead. They have a team that need to keep up. And they are desperate for funding, but they can only get funding if they are able to expand internationally. However, to expand internationally, you really have to have already a good product market fit. But unfortunately, a lot of our scale-ups have the product market fit for Hungary or for the region. If you have a product that's a good fit for CE, that will not be, most likely it will not be a good product for more digitally developed markets or bigger markets. It's very different. So then they come across and they struggle a lot to get to this next phase, because their product, in many cases, are still too country and too region specific. And when we look at where startups' incomes are coming from, 2/3 of Hungarian startups' incomes comes from Hungary. The rest is coming from Europe, so we have very little coming from North America or other, which is mostly Asia. If you look at similar-sized countries, I would like to highlight, Austria, Europe. This is a lot of German and DACH region money coming in. Czech Republic. Interestingly, they have double the amount coming in from North America, so they have a much better direction towards North America. Israel, unsurprisingly, is very open and aiming towards the US as well, a little bit towards Europe. And I think Slovakia, our northern neighbors, are one of the very interesting ones, because, of course, a big part of this is actually Czech Republic. So Slovakian companies love to go to the Czech Republic. It's fairly easy. But still, because they have smaller market, and unfortunately for Estonia, we did not have this number, but very small markets propel companies straight towards foreign markets from the very beginning. And they also have, so I think these are inspirations, what we should slowly start to aim forward with our startups to get more and more income from international markets. Also, because again, we see that our most rising startups, or most interesting and growing startups, 2/3 of them are actually getting their income primarily from export. So they are export heavy, they are getting their money not from locally, but primarily from foreign markets. So to summarize, the biggest challenges is to find competent, ambitious founders who are willing to actually risk their skin in the game and want to grow big. Then second, whenever there are missing competencies, in Hungary that's primarily in sales and marketing and business. We are better in the engineering and development parts. it's very hard to find that missing competency and bring it into the team. Then the third one is angel investors, and how they can be better supported to be more active and take a bigger active role in the ecosystem. And fourth is how to help startups and especially scale-ups to go as quickly to global markets as quickly as possible. To achieve this, we need to focus some of our strengths, which some of I've mentioned. We have a high number of STEM students. We have a high willingness to launch your own company, not a startup, but still a high willingness to become an entrepreneur. There are many good examples of innovative SMEs or developer studios who have found a scalable product and they were able to leverage that and become like really successful startups. We have a good ecosystem background and good background in some of the biggest verticals that are still going and globally growing. We have a strength in B2B services, the SAS, high level of Hungarian expats, actually in potential foreign target markets, in the US, for example, even some in Asia, which are currently untapped. Budapest can also attract talent because we can be a very attractive city to live in and work in. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out also to Kaporta, Imre, and all the organizers here, and also Humban, because I think recently we have seen an increasing amount of ecosystem building and community and sharing and collaboration, which is absolutely necessary. So last but not least, I think this was the last big event where we were coming together, was during the summer at Óbuda University for a deep ecosystem talk. And there was a question of what our ecosystem should start, stop, and continue. And I think we should stop making excuses, start really taking responsibility and do our part wherever we can make impact. And last but not least, continue this really good collaboration and build those bridges where we can all be successful and in a win-win situation. Thank you for your attention.